Welcome to Design Talks Now, hosted by Design Pavilion, created to help inform the public on architecture, design, and urban planning. I'm Eileen Shaw, producer of Design Pavilion and Design Talks. Today, we welcome Latvia to the conversation, delving into Latvia design and its refined heritage. We'll learn how Latvia is facing the pandemic by following the lead of its experts and thus becoming a world leader for its best practices through technology. The country has taken a unified approach to the coronavirus, rooted in a respect for science. To the surprise of many, this Northern European country of 1.92 million people is absolutely at the top of the coronavirus pandemic success stories. Kaspars Ruskans, the Director General of the Investment and Development Agency of Latvia, will walk us through this example of Latvian innovation. And then we'll meet our panel of designers with their own unique expertise in the field of design. Together, they'll cover the Latvian design sector and discuss their ecological, functional, and unique take on products in today's market. Latvian-made designs represent cultural and historical heritage, uniquely combining the simplicity of Scandinavia with the opulence of Slavic decoration that is unique to Latvia's location within the Baltics. Combining heritage with modern technologies allows products to be minimalist while presenting a hand-quality feeling. Our moderator today is Garrett Johnson of Garrett Designs. And now, let's begin.
Hi everyone, I'm Garrett Johnson, Creative Strategist in Brand Development. I'm thrilled to introduce Kaspars Rujklans, Director General at the Investment of Development Agency of Latvia. Kaspars has been working for the LIAA for the last 5 years. Previously, Kaspar worked as the head of LIAA Representative Office in Shanghai, China, and since 2018 as the head of LIAA Representative Office in Germany. Prior to that, he worked for a long time at the private sector in the service industry. The Investment and Development Agency of Latvia operates as a subordinate to the Minister of Economics of Latvia. The agency aims at increasing export and competitiveness of Latvian companies, facilitating foreign investment, and implementing tourism development and innovation policies. LIAA focuses on facilitating investment and stands for legislation that favors entrepreneurship while advocating for infrastructure and support. The brand Magnetic Latvia was created in 2018 to introduce the world to the best of what Latvia has to offer in technology, literature, art, and science. The Magnetic Latvia Business Information Center is located in Riga Latvia International Airport, open to the public as a go-to hub of information on all Latvia has to offer. So Kaspars, welcome. I'm excited to be chatting with you today. As I understand it, Latvia has been ahead of the curve dealing with the COVID crisis. How was it that you were able to achieve the actions you did and deal with the response so quickly?
Well, yeah, a couple of things happened. First of all, government came together with the healthcare industry and obviously together with the companies to figure out the plan how in the short term we can survive the crisis. Getting these numbers aligned, obviously the first step was to do some restrictions, but restrictions fast enough to see how the situation developed, and then we were able to adapt because we had meetings with the multiple ministries, with the companies multiple times even per day at the early beginning of the crisis to understand what is happening here, what is happening in the health sector, what is happening internationally, what is happening in the market, so we could adjust our policies very, very quickly.
You've been very creative in that you already had existing technologies and you adapted those technologies, and those companies were able to quickly shift production into materials and needs to deal with the situation. You had mentioned in a recent webinar 3 key strategic industries that you're developing in Latvia that could also contribute to similar disruptions to help aid quickly in collaboration with other countries. Can you tell us a little bit about those 3 sectors?
Yeah, well, obviously most connected to solving the problems was the IT sector in general. And then when we see the IT sector, we can connect together with more classical sectors, for example, this sector in education or government. We were able to create e-parliament in just a matter of months. The same happened with the schooling system. Obviously, we never previously realistically looked at long-term solution for how to go to school via some online platform. And that Tava Klasse, that happened very quickly. So children were able to keep up with the education. We were able to implement and provide that in just 2 weeks. And the speed of the solution, how we were able to implement it. If we look at other country examples, then we can see that even Finland, who has one of the best education systems in the world, they're coming now to us to look how we were able to manage that fast. The same story goes with this Stop the COVID app that we created more or less in 1 month's time, that tracks the phone and the movement, and it's totally anonymous, and it only reports if you were in connection with somebody, but you never know who was COVID-19 positive, and then get a notification to your phone that you have to go and test your health and obviously watch for the symptoms in following days. The digitalization within the environment and connectivity, that happened really, really fast. And now it is the time that we are able and we want to tell the story about Latvia, that we are ahead of the curve, not only in this COVID-19, but in general, because we have great environment, we have amazing talent, and we have a lot of success stories that we're ready to share with the world.
That's incredible. So you covered actually 2 fascinating areas here. Education, which is something we've been struggling here with the US, trying to decide how to move forward with education in this circumstance. And like you mentioned, similar to Finland, knowing that the education system is supreme and children are advancing rather quickly in both countries. And then that also being directly correlated to the fact that you are innovative in the technological sector. That app is an incredible innovation. You had mentioned that it was intuitive, that people could pick it up and intuitively use it without having too much learning curve on that. Both are obviously an extension of the intelligence and forethought going on in Latvia. That also leads to smart cities too. In technology, smart energy, and agriculture, you are innovating in those spaces as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, if we look at, let's say, for example, smart city, then we are ahead in Northern Europe for sure in developing the 5G test beds and different 5G business solutions. Currently, the world understands the 5G is going to be the future of connectivity and technology, how we will interact with each other, how devices, machines will interact with each other, how the let's say production works in the future. And that is one of the, let's say, key focuses that we are planning and we are already developing here. We're a small country, and nobody, overall, nobody knows where is Latvia. We are in high end in technology. We're well developed there. In combination with environment, the 15 minutes it takes to downtown Riga, the capital of Latvia, till anywhere very, very green, or even maybe 25 minutes to the beach. It is possible, totally possible, to live in city of Kurat, but work in the metropole of Baltic states. So connectivity, it's not only the fastness of internet, but it's obviously the connectivity with the nature and connectivity within the people. It means that in Latvia, if you know anybody from Latvia, you're just 2 handshakes away to prime minister. And that is the plus of small nation. And if you take this combination, technology, environment, and connection and fastness of the government, these are the, let's say, unique advantages that we can present through different sectors, such as smart cities, smart energy, food production, and so on and so on.
Yeah, you are able to connect with nature through these urban spaces. And I know for a fact that Latvians are very much in tune with nature, but also very much value innovation and thought-provoking solutions to design and technology. How do you see agriculture? I know you were developing and closing the loop of food production and consumption, which is a huge, I guess you would say, wicked problem. How is Latvia developing those kinds of technologies and thinking outside of even the country of Latvia itself in solving those problems?
Yeah, well, food production is one of the main sectors of Latvia. It's one of the products that we export to the world. However, if we looked at the long-term problem of potential food shortages, we have an innovation grants that we try to push those classical sector companies in the way of innovation, how to make their production greener, how to make their production more efficient, so they would be able not to put the pressure on fields of agriculture so much as to put the pressure on production volumes. If we work more efficient, more greener, we can produce more food with the same amount of space that we need. And therefore our agency helps the companies who are ready to export to work with their products, to work together with scientists. And this goes not only into the food production, but the same goes into design. We're not targeting the mass production for the whole world, because we understand Latvia is small and we'll never reach that. What we want to do is produce very high quality, high price, very beautiful design products that would be interesting for high-end customers, for movie industry, and for different setups that are ready to pay the price for the quality and for the greenness and for the design within that.
Fantastic. So cross-disciplinary collaboration is happening within the technology developments, within agriculture and the sciences, and AI within Latvia. So you're not really looking to solve the problems necessarily, the food problem, especially globally, but you do have solutions that you've been working on collaboratively towards that end, and other countries could benefit from that knowledge and that collaboration. How do you see partnering with other countries and helping people solve those problems, even on a larger scale, with information per se or best practices, rather than necessarily supply?
Cooperation with other countries and with other companies from the other countries, we see the power and the, let's say, strength that if we can create a joint venture companies who then would use, let's say, access to the market somewhere else, and then our know-how on developing the technology, IT solutions, then we can create the joint venture and joint venture product, what would be suitable for large multinationals, for large countries, and we see here the Latvia as a test bed. Currently, the test bed for countries within the European Union, but as a test bed, if you can test solutions here and understand that this works, you can test not only solutions as for the companies, you can test the legislation to understand what kind of legislation you have to create in what country, how the legislation works. And it's not only about the product, it's about the combination, how the product and the legislation comes together for one solution, how to make life easier, how to make life greener and more efficient.
Fantastic. So are there any particular countries you're especially interested in collaborating with? And what are your plans for the future in collaboration?
Well, obviously, the closer plans for collaboration are already in your mentioned sectors as a smart cities, smart energy, smart materials, biomedicine, biotech. In these sectors where we can see it can solve the problems not only in Latvia, not only in the European Union, but there would be solutions for global problems such as a food shortage or environment problems. And we see the collaboration phase as a, let's say, startup approach that we know not all of the solutions or ideas will survive market. Not everybody will reach globally, but if we start to test them here, we can start to test a lot of ideas, and some of them will grow into the unicorns. I hope that the campaign Ahead of the Curve is only the beginning. We really want to tell the story about Latvia and about success and potential here to everyone around the world. Ahead of the Curve is great, but here we're ready for any challenge, and we see that we can move fast and create the solutions on the world stage. Therefore, we're probably the best country for investors. That's let's say the short takeaway.
It's true. Latvia is a little known country with a high, hard punch. The education, the innovation, the agility, the resilience to deal with future challenges and be a thought leader in that way. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your perspective on this issue.
Thank you.
I'm excited to be here today in conversation with this intriguing group of creative industry brands and development agencies representing Latvia by design. I welcome our creative brand speakers, Michaelis Baltics, co-founder and senior designer of Scandinavia, a brand design studio in Riga, Latvia. Along with client-based branding projects, Michaelis is also co-founder and invested in various small startups such as Bad Weather, an organic skincare brand for men, Woollig natural wool slippers, and Misea, a Latvian design concept brand that encourages people to buy less by choosing well. Scandinavia is a strategic brand and packaging design studio for ambitious businesses and organizations from the Baltic region. Scandinavia aims to find and put into context the right balance between contemporary Northern minimalism and rich Eastern heritage that is Latvian design. Alvida Klinge is the founder of Ars Tela Textiles. A woman designer, Alvida has been pioneering Latvian contemporary textiles for more than 17 years, setting brave trends across interior and lifestyle, as well as the accessories textile field worldwide. As a new generation designer and visionary, she believes that sustainable Latvian textile design can be supported by masterful interaction of many generations of hand weavers, young art designers, and other craftspeople who pass their values and trade skills from one to another. Ars Tela is a modern management company who employs around 25 experienced craftspeople from ages 18 to 84. For many, providing an opportunity to hand weave from various home locations in rural Latvian regions and surrounds. The Ars Tela company challenges and transforms Latvian ancient hand weaving, ornamentation, and unique Latvian patterns by adding innovative, luxury natural yarns and threads from across the world, thus gaining revolutionary structures and visual identity textures exclusive to Ars Tela handmade quality. Eva Kalea calls herself a poet of design, with a prime focus to evoke emotions through design. Eva aims to surprise the people that experience her lamps, both with the choice of material and with its transformation. She steps outside the realm of virtual thinking to find real things and new ways of applying natural materials. Her designs are inspired by everything primeval that comes from Mother Nature. The natural harshness of materials contrasted with the perfect refinement. She holds a bachelor's degree in visual arts, Art Academy of Latvia, and a master's degree at Dumas Academy in Milan. Eva works at the Art Academy of Latvia and Latvian Design Center, the most significant institution of design in Latvia. The name Mama Lampa refers to going back to the roots, Mother Nature, and genuine expression. The brand looks for ways not of producing more, but of producing differently, believing in emotion over function. Mama Lampa forgoes mass production with greater interest in creating in the image of living materials touched with by craftsmen. The company's signature is characterized by the contemporary interpretation of handmade, which does not mean replacing machines, but looking for things that machines can't do. The natural harshness of the materials in the collection contrasts with the perfect treatment manifested through the expertise of craftsmen. Mama Lampa imagines materials in an unexpected light, creating its own distinctive signature and values. And we welcome Elena Doble, who after several years of practice in architecture turned to footwear design with the vision of creating the first shoe concept brand in the Baltic countries. When designing her collections, Elena applies her architectural experience, assuming shoes are small houses for the feet, with distinct geometry and clean lines. Elena Doble's namesake concept brand, along with the shoe design atelier in Riga, Latvia, takes a made-to-measure approach. The atelier is united with the craftsmanship of artisans, and it's foundational for the structural yet poetic design characterized by pure forms, transformable construction, and use of high-quality natural materials. All shoes and accessories are unique and 100% handmade as designed, as well as repaired or replaced in the atelier. Welcome all. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm curious, nature seems to permeate all of the designs here, all of your interest in design. Alvita, how does nature inform your brand?
I think that Arstella's designs encode the interconnectedness of our green lifestyle, the history of being possessed country for many centuries, the traditions, and also the culture, and also Latvian mentality. The nature plays a very big part in Arstella designs. First of all, Arstella's interior textile main collection color palette characterizes the north severe and rough climate and also the nature. In Arstella textiles, you will see 60 shades of gray to black, all the beautiful color of Latvian. If we talk about nature in textile, also when I started this brand, there was a story behind. I wanted to show also that Latvian history is very much connected with growing linen, and that's why I chose linen as the basic material also for Arstella collection. The linen, which is Baltic grown linen, and I would like to remind the viewers that Baltic region used to be very famous for many centuries for growing linen. We call linen as Baltic silk because our soil used to be extremely favorable because of rain and snow, very favorable for growing linen yarn. And that's why I also involved natural material linen in our textiles.
As you mentioned, the roughness and the earthiness of the textiles, especially in linen, and the textures of the textiles that you have, you go from this amazing gossamer sheerness and softness to a rugged, voluptuous cable knit, which is really exciting to touch in your products. Similarly, Eva, you have found a way of creating a refined sense of the roughness of nature through your lamps. Can you tell us a little bit about how nature informs the design of your products?
I would say that our background consists with living in deep harmony with the nature, and Mother Nature is our most significant teacher. I really believe that Mother Nature is the most talented, and people only can try to follow her guidelines. My ideas are inspired by everything primeval, which is still open to interpretation, so it can be transformed and exhibited in unusual context.
Yeah, it's incredible. Your designs really do look like found objects brought into the home in a refined way and creating illumination in new and interesting ways. Michaela, similarly, I saw your Bad Weather men's organic skincare brand also influenced by nature. Can you tell us a little bit about how nature influences your conceptual designs when creating brand identity and graphics?
Yeah, I think nature for most of Latvians, designers or not, is a way how we recharge. Mainly how we recharge, and in this way we gain our inspiration to create anything. When you're in nature, you learn to deeply observe the ordinary things around you, and every great piece of design in the end is inspired by observing nature. So nature is a way of recharging and inspiring everything we do because it's so close to where we are.
And Elena, similarly, being from an architectural perspective, I find it so fascinating, your collection of designs. How does nature inform the design of your shoes, the versatility of that? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I have to agree, I guess, with Michaelis, that for me, nature is more like a recharge. Each weekend I go to my country house and there I stay for the weekend. I really love gardening. And I guess only then when I come back to city, I'm like energized and then maybe subconsciously something is happening while I design.
And interestingly, being in the Baltic region, you are conveniently located just between Scandinavian countries and Slavic regions, which informs your design aesthetic, I think, overall in Latvia. You have this minimalist quality, but you also have this opulence that's coming from the Slavic influence. What aspects of that do you see informing design, especially Michaelis, you had mentioned this being the balance in your aesthetic of graphic design, the minimalism and the opulence of these influences. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that it is in a unique position where most of the citizens in Baltic region speak both languages and are familiar with both cultures. And this gives us a more in-depth opportunity to work with different things from each of those cultures and each of those aesthetics. Of course, we're a new country in a way that we had a hard reset in 1990s when we regained our independence. So although we have this rich heritage, we can draw from it, but create new experiences, new designs from it. So we're not trying to cite it, but we're trying to see what works from that and where we can build on top of that in a new way. And being influenced by all of these different aspects that are around us, maybe it gives us more like a weird, a bit imperfect, not so polished feel, but that's at the end our characteristic.
When I create my textiles, I want the owner of my textiles would feel the Latvian ancestral energies in it. And I'm a big patriot of Latvia, and I'm a passionate lover of textile. And for me, there is a big challenge always to find how to mix different materials, which I started my business in 2003 when in Latvia we had very conservative opinion about which yarns you can mix, which materials can be mixed. I was interested in challenging standard laws or rules. For me, as I have a business background, not so much art background, it was always interesting as for a business person to create a product which carries a story. Story, then it must be Baltic grown linen. A story, it must be handcraft and hand woven, because Latvia has been famous and still is famous from all 3 Baltic states for hand weaving. We have many companies who hand weave. These are, of course, on the global scale, these are atelier type companies, but I wanted that the world would know that Latvia is famous for hand weaving, and automatically it goes into a niche product. In my textiles, you see 90% very old Latvian weaving patterns and ornaments, which is again a story about Latvian textile heritage. Talking about nature, in fact, when I started working in textiles, I started seeing the nature and the world and the colors totally different. And in my textiles, you see the color of the oak bark. You see the color of the northern sea. It's very dark, peculiar color of blue. It's different colors of Latvian winter sky.
Well, let's circle back to that, Alvita. So I want to really talk about this handmade quality and the heritage of Latvian and how you guys are bringing this into the future, and how you're updating that through technology and innovation. One of the most fascinating things, and as Michaelis had mentioned, in recent history, I know the coming down of the Berlin Wall in the 80s was a huge experience for Latvian people. I remember receiving messages as a child about how significant that was to the freedom and expression of its culture and opening that up to the world. An absolutely amazing period. And so here we are, decades later, where you're able to express yourself on a global platform. How are you cascading heritage, handmade, into the modern society? And Elena, this is a perfect question for you with your modern architectural shoes. How are you bringing that handmade quality to it with this refined, polished modernity that you have that's signature to your brand?
When I design, I use my personal experience. I can give you an example. For 5 years ago, when we started to renovate our country house, which once belonged to my grandmother and grandfather, So I went upstairs on the attic and started to sort out all of the old things they have there. And I found my grandmother's shoes. And this is exactly how I remember my grandmother from the times when I was small. She has those shoes from the 60s. The shoes apparently were too big for her. Because at those Soviet times, you couldn't buy sometimes shoes that were your size. And this gave me an inspiration, and I created a collection devoted to my grandmother. And I remember her, and her style was some kind of from the 60s, and the color palette, and yeah, personal experience, I guess.
That's incredible. I love that story. And in your shoes, it does seem like you have the heritage and the modernity in one piece, in that your toe, it reminds me of heritage pieces of Latvian shoes, and more of a folk influence, but your heel is like the architecture. It's like the building. It's got this contemporary modern shape and really seems like an artistic piece of sculpture. And speaking of sculpture, Eva, tell us a little bit about how heritage has informed your designs and how you bring that. I know especially in the braided bride collection, the braided raffia lamps. Braids are a huge part of Latvian heritage. Can you talk a little bit about how heritage is informing your designs, but you're bringing that into a modern mentality?
For me, the designing process is about dialogue with materials, and I never know where this conversation ends. I think speaking about heritage, the good thing is that we don't have a very strong design tradition, which limits us. So therefore, we have conditions to make very creative solutions, and we are open to new trends and new experiments. My approach is to use all these extremely natural materials which are not produced, and natural accents, something very spontaneous.
Fantastic. And Michaelis, what would you say is distinctly Latvian about the visual language you create when developing visual identity for these brands?
I think as a country, as I mentioned, we're quite young. And actually, I think it's a bit too early to say that we have a strong brand as a country, or even more like individual designers or design language as such, because we're starting to handpick what we like from different sides of our neighboring countries and neighboring cultures that have influenced in history. But we're quite young, and I don't think that we can say we have a very strong, distinct language yet, as it is, for example, for Scandinavians or Russians or the Slavic region, where we have very specific and strong image of what their visual language is. And we can mix these things that at some point seems unmixable, or that are very separate or even opposite, but we have this luxury that we can handpick different things and form our own point of view. And in a way, I hope in the few decades we will form our own distinctive language.
Well, that's incredible, because that does speak to, again, that creativity and resilience that exists at the core of Latvian culture. So maybe it's less about the visual identity, but actually in the cultural behavior of resilience and creativity. Being able to look around you and do whatever you can with what's there is an amazing aspect of the innovation that's coming out of Latvia that really hasn't had a voice yet on the global stage and is about to. That's really interesting. And speaking of innovation and entrepreneurship, so you are a multi-venturepreneur, Michaelis. You have co-founded and invested in startups of several brands: Bad Weather, Woollig, Mesa, Concept Retail. How are you able to manage that? How are you adapting creatively to navigate those very different brands and still have a life balance with your growing family?
I think it goes back to your question regarding nature, because to do multiple things, the first thing you have to do is to reduce the unnecessary noise around you. And being in such a remote place in the world, it's actually easier to do than if we would be in the center of the world, as it is for you guys. And for us, it's actually super easy to just jump in a car and drive for an hour or two and be in a beach that is completely isolated and completely free of any other people or human being. So in going to places like that, you can just recharge and reset everything around you and be free of the noise around you for a day or two or weeks if you need. And then you can jump back into the tasks and the ideas that you have. And I think that balance between removing the noise and then setting the priorities allows that to happen, which at first it seems weird because we're so far away from the global hotspots, and we're such a small country, and we have these forests and beaches around us. And in a way, if you can keep yourself disciplined and then know exactly what is important for you and set the priorities and get rid of everything that's unnecessary, that helps a lot.
That is so true. I'm a big believer in discipline, process, and also being able to relax and recharge. It's an amazing thing that I think we have a difficulty with, being overachievers, especially here in New York City, and being able to find these places of solace, connect with nature in whatever small ways we can in these urban settings, is definitely something we could learn from your area in Latvia, and this idea of innovation, production, being disciplined creators, but also being able to take that time and take a rest and step back and really decide what's important is such a vital part of the creative process. Speaking of the creative process and resilience and creativity, Elena, your shoes are bespoke designs. They can also be replaced and fixed. You actually maintain your records to be able to service your clients even years later after your products, which are durable and last quite a long time. How are you able to do that? How are you able to continuously revitalize your products on a long-term basis?
I can actually say that, for example, this design comes back from the first collection that I did in 2010, and it's even now, 10 years later, it's still one of the most wanted designs and loved designs from my customers, and I still make and produce this design. And I think that with the shoes, there is this thing that customers are really happy that they can reorder the same pair once the first one is weared out. Still, I also do new designs each season, and not all of them are staying from year to year in the collection. But I think that during these 10 years of work, there has been at least 10 designs that I'm trying to keep in the main collection and reproduce each year.
I mean, it's a small collection relatively by American scale. I worked in the fashion industry for 15 years, and having that small amount of number of shoes and really being able to focus on the quality of that, and the fact that your customers can come back and ask for a shoe that is a 10-year-old design is really an interesting business model. It just doesn't exist here. And there are certainly, I mean, I've had shoes in my life that sadly have gone away because they've just deteriorated and there's no way to replace them. It's really incredible to me that you've created these art pieces that resonate with people in that they want to carry them with them their entire lives and are able to do that and go back to those designs. It's a very interesting business model. Similarly, the handmade quality, Eva, you use natural materials and refine them to a degree. You had mentioned trying to find what machines can't do and refining that. How are you able to create relevance in older pieces or in flawed pieces, natural materials that you're discovering, and then giving that a refined sense to the customer at a high level of a luxurious piece?
Yeah, Nama Lampa has looked and found a way of not producing more, but producing differently. And each model in our collection tells its own story. And for example, in our Queen collection, the main craftsman is the time, because to make this rusty part, it takes time. So it's something actually. Sometimes it's a couple of weeks to produce this rusted surface. So I think this is a new way of this luxury design, how to look at things.
This idea that you found a way of not so much producing more, but producing differently, creating something that may be a unique one-off piece, but is within the context of a collection in that you can duplicate the concept, but still have unique pieces that are not duplicate. Similarly, Alvita, are you creating larger collections, or are you finding one-of-a-kind textiles and pieces that you really can only make a few pieces, and that becomes a luxurious offering that allows your clients and your collectors to find those unique key artistic pieces?
During my 17 years of participating internationally on in different trade fairs, whether it's Paris or Japan or Singapore or Jakarta or America, we found that in our business we can have two main directions. We have collections which can be repeated, and the items that can be reproduced even after 15, 17 years. If, let's say, a Japanese clients, they prefer exactly this item and it suits their taste, and many clients, they think this is the item of their dream or love item, or this item becomes their love toy, as they say. We can do this, but we also produce extremely small collections. Let's say if we talk about plaids or scarves, then it can be only produce 20 items, the same. And then one would be going to Germany, one would be going to Japan, one would be going to America. So it's extremely custom made and country made. Yeah. So we have managed with our craftsmanship, combining hand weaving with different luxurious yarns, what we buy from Italy. We buy the latest advancements in the production of yarn. We buy the highest quality cashmere from Loro Piana company. We buy the silk from Prada company. We work with branded yarns like Brunello Cucinelli, Gucci, Ralph Lauren. And with these yarns, they have specific structure, specific look, and specific high quality. And we learned that we, on handlooms, we can, by mixing those yarns, natural, artificial, thin, thick, curly, metallic, amber thread, when you mix it and when you take time, that's why we call ourselves as the pioneers of slow design. We can create timeless design, and we can create small quantities. We can hand pick yarns for certain clients. We can fill our exclusive premium class niche with, let's say, plaids like thick silk with linen, if the client needs it and he cannot find machine-made plaid made of these two items. We work extremely, and we have always worked extremely focused with the client, meeting the client, the needs of certain clients. That's why we managed, because of our philosophy, we managed to enter our Stella into the top level, and in fact compete with top brands, yeah, or even higher. So, but we work differently. We produce, let's say, 100 pieces, the same pieces, and we can produce only 10, even 5 items. And we work extremely customized with architects from all over the world, creating textiles for, let's say, Four Seasons Hotel in Maldives. We make the designs and we hand weave for Armani Casa, for their label. So with 5-star restaurants or boutique hotels. So we have understood that we have to work in different streams, and we can do it.
It's interesting that you mentioned this slow way of working. Back in I guess it was 2015, WGSN had forecasted towards the futures of, I believe it was a 2019 forecast called Slow Futures. And that was where things were handmade and limited editions, small collections, and luxurious products. And it seems like all of your brands here are representing that, and that they're small runs, there's high attention paid to quality and luxury, and a real connection with the customer and the client, and knowing where they are, the lifestyle they live, and catering to that in the most desirable way. As you mentioned, many of your hand weavers are located in rural areas of Latvia working from home. Is that right? So how are you managing?
The elderly, yeah, the elderly. The young generation works in the capital of Riga because young people like to move to the capital. So in our headquarters in the old town, we have mainly young people working, yes.
Got you. So all the young people are in one location and some of your elder, more seasoned hand weavers are in other locations.
Yes.
That's an incredible model, especially as we move towards working more remotely, and people being employed at an older stage in life, not retiring as they used to, being able to find that value of connecting your youth with your older employees. That's really interesting that you're able to build a business model around that and still keep the high level of quality. Elena, you have an atelier as well. How are you staffing and how are you managing that multidisciplinary and various connections within the heritage and handmade craft of your atelier?
Actually, when I started and turned to shoe design from architecture, that was the very important idea I had, and it was really important for me to create the place that would combine a small shoe shop, my studio, and a small factory. So I thought that by the help of this place, it would be much easier to communicate with the customer the importance of choosing something that is long-lasting over the fast fashion, because once they would enter into this place, they would also feel or maybe hear the sounds, and that would give them the whole feeling that actually the shoe can be much more than just like comfortable wearable object. For me, shoes are the most beautiful small design object.
Fantastic. And Michaela, similarly, I mean, touching upon the idea of fast fashion. So again, you have several brands under your wing, and a concept retail store. How are you managing to make sure that stays authentically luxurious and rather unique and away from fast fashion or away from over creating and overproducing product?
I think we're still trying to figure that out, to be honest. And we don't have an atelier or like physical store in a way that Alvida or Elena mentioned, and we're mostly focused on online. And so it's a challenge how to get that experience when you're mostly visible online, how to tell your story in a platform that's not physical and that where you cannot meet the persons in real life. But I think that's a challenge we all face today all over the world. Yeah, and I think regarding your question about the quality and slow fashion, it's actually, I think the restrictions we have as a country limit us in some certain ways, and in return we have this one direction where we all have to look forward. How can we, as a small country with limited resources, do some spectacular things for the world? And in design in general, it's always when you have some restrictions, it helps to create new ideas, and I think that's the only way forward.
Indeed. And so how are you incorporating, I mean, innovating in the technology space, being that you're fully online with these products and you're able then to reach a global audience, but again, with the limited production and limited resources as a small brand, how are you bridging that gap? How are you innovating and adapting to that?
I think the actual answer to your question is very basic. You always have to listen to the people you're trying to serve. So it's innovation always is around people, and so do the products. If you listen to people and their needs and try to find sometimes maybe the sentiments that they haven't maybe acknowledged themselves, and if you can unearth them, if you can find them, and if you can put them in a spotlight or show them in a different perspective, and then maybe create something for the people that they already wanted, but maybe you give them that in a different way or different manner or different shape.
So it's a conversation. It's a conversation with your customer and always reinventing in the space where those limitations may be. It's a really agile way to live.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
truly are an entrepreneur. Similarly, Eva, how, again, your products are uniquely dictated by the forms that you find and refine into its special unique shape, which is a highly luxurious item. How are you connecting in innovative ways, adapting your business model to the demand and moving forward with your company?
I think a very interesting aspect is that a lot of employees in our company are older people because they still have these craftsman skills, because younger people, they are more in all these new technologies. But if we want to work with materials, so obviously there are older people who had more experience with different I don't know, skills and work with materials. And as designers, we have to somehow to find these what is in all these skills, what can we take and how convert it in some modern design solution. And and I think this is the maybe also answer to the question that it's not always about research in the market. It's more to find something valuable and to show to the world, and just people like that to think. We don't think about marketing as a like traditional marketing. We are more like poets of I don't know, materials.
It's true. From all the products I've seen in researching your brands, there's definitely a poetry and a handmade creative quality to it. Again, this resilience of Latvia, this long heritage of being able to adapt to what's happening to you, innovate when you have the freedoms to create what you want to see in the world, and really making something uniquely your own in that way. I want to ask you all as a final question, what does resilience mean to you as a Latvian designer? Michaelis, we'll start with you.
I think, put it simply, it's always being able to stand back up once you've been put down or fallen down. Just what our history has taught us along the years is just when you fall down, just get the courage and strength to put yourself back on and just keep moving.
Love that. Elena, how about you?
Yeah, for me, it's more about flexibility and adaptation and understanding that as long as you change and you are able to change, you can learn something new and you're gonna live on.
Indeed. Alvida.
I think I've been always very much learning when I travel through the world, and I see what is there, what is missing. I think after the time of globalization, when we all have the same brands, whether you go to Japan, New York, Latvia, we have the same stores. After this comes always a time when a certain part of clientele is looking for something unique. And I think Latvia, because of the size of our country and population, we can offer something unique and experiment and be small, and that's why be adaptable to different crises, different global crises in the world. I found by having my weavery together with my showroom that people are more and more being interested and evaluate something where they see how process is being made. People want a personal item. They want to see the weaver and take, let's say, a picture how it is possible in my weavery with the weaver who made this scarf. And only after they visit the weavery and see the uniqueness of this process, they understand the pricing, they understand the uniqueness of the product. It's very important and it's very trendy in Latvia to see the process, how bread is being baked. Yeah, how candles are being made. And this makes the product not just that people say, oh, okay, bread costs a lot or textiles cost a lot, but they understand why it costs what it costs. I think this is what fascinates the world, and this is the modern trade and trend in the world nowadays.
You're absolutely right. And thank you so much for adding that insight.
Yes.
Because yes, as a traveler, I've noticed that too. Over several years of returning to different continents and countries, I started to see a a missingness of what those handmade pieces were, and then starting to see the stores I see in New York City, the stores I see anywhere else I've ever been, and a loss of provenance when you travel, and even when you're buying special goods for special reasons, special experiences. That handmade quality, the story that goes into it, the ingredients of it is a story you want to know, and that's what you're buying, and that's what you feel great about when you leave a country and you have this memorial of that experience and that connection with that culture. It's truly amazing to see those products coming out of Latvia in that, with that hand quality, with that attention to detail, with that attention to expression of everything that you're seeing and of the people. That's really what people are looking for, whether they're traveling to that country or whether they're ordering it and just want a piece of something that resembles a place they aspire to. Fantastic. Eva, what does resilience mean to you as a Latvian designer?
I think for me, it's all about experiments, about looking for new solutions in any situation, and it's about search for new aesthetics also, and not just looking back on traditions and on limits, but go beyond the limits and looking for new solutions.
Absolutely sums it up beautifully. Thank you so much for that insight. It's clear that you are all visionaries and creatives within your space and are able to agilely adapt to the world of design. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me.
Thank you, Garrett, for just bringing us together, and we hope to see you someday here in Latvia when the restrictions are off and we can finally travel around the world.
Absolutely. I can't wait to visit. It's a beautiful country.
Thank you, Garrett, Kaspars, Eva, Elvina, Elena, and Michaelis for sharing your expertise and perspective with us. You clearly understand the beauty of local production and sourcing, the value of handcraft and hand-touch production, high-quality natural materials, long-lasting classic design, and the slowing of market cycles and production processes. You provide us with a check on consumerism and throwaway fashion, and you demonstrate what true sustainability is by seeking and honoring quality. And thank you all for joining us. I hope you've been inspired, as I have been, with a hope for kinder values. And please join us next week when we present innovation, beauty, and new adjustable ways of living, acknowledging that every crisis is also the opportunity for a paradigm shift. So until then, please stay safe, stay smart. Design stands together.